Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day. Not to be in a cult. We are talking a bit more Linkin Park today, guys. Earlier, well, let's see. Last week, I shared with you one of many articles that we discussed was this one here. Chester Bennington's son, Jamie, hits out at Mike Shinoda for betraying trust of Linkin Park fans with Emily Armstrong. And if I can find the actual quote here. Okay, so it says Jamie Bennington, the son of the late frontman, has taken to social media to share his thoughts on the Reformation with Emily Armstrong and to criticize Mike Shinoda for betraying Linkin Park fans with the decision. Taking to his Instagram stories late last night on September 8th, Jamie Bennington shared a screenshot of recent comments made by Mike Shinoda in which the founding member addressed how fans may need time to wrap their heads around the band reforming with Emily Armstrong. In the comments, Mike Shinoda also said that those who disrespect him due to the decision will lose my respect in return. Jamie responded, "Hey, Mike, people aren't having a difficult time wrapping their head around the prospect of Linkin Park reinventing itself. They're having a hard time wrapping their head around how you hired your friend of many years, Emily Armstrong, to replace Chester Bennington, knowing Emily's history in Scientology and her history as an ally to Danny Masterson." So, who better to discuss this and all things Linkin Park with Chester Bennington's son, Jamie Bennington. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I see you're wearing some additional items.
Yeah, I had a scarf behind me, and sometimes I like to wrap it around my head like hair because I'm bald. It makes me feel pretty.
You and I discussed it beforehand, but let's tell the audience what is the name Boku?
Oh yeah. So Jamie is the easiest name for me to use when I interface with the world because that's what my family knows me as. It's what my friends know me as. That's what my like employers might know me as. It's my legal name. But in reality, I'm not just Jamie in here. I'm like a million other people. And that's what I started saying when I came out last October. I had said, I might look like Jamie, I might sound like Jamie, but the Jamie you think you know is not the Jamie that's standing in front of you. And it probably won't be the same Jamie you see the next time you see me. You know what I mean? Like it's that quick. So Boku is one of my, you might call it a personality or a moniker or something. To me, it represents my higher self right now. I have my feminine self, which is Jamie, which is the form, the, moon, so to speak. It's the interaction I have in the real world. And then I have the mental world, of course, the one within, and that one takes on a different name every once in a while. And now its name is Boku. So, but I believe if I did my research correctly, Boku stands for the term I in the English language. And so essentially it's like a master of self, bringing themselves down to the servant level so they can interact with people, bring yourself to the world instead of have the world bring itself to you. I am a servant to my community and to the people in my life. So it felt like a nice middle ground of like, okay, you have your ego and you have what you want and in your life, what you are, and then you have what you could be. And for me, that's just embodied in being there and outspoken about certain things and interacting in terms of certain conversations with certain people. And so when I go do that, or when I plan things out, that's Boku. When I go and act them out, that's Jamie. And so there's kind of a nice dichotomy. It's like a weird, for a lot of people, it might come off as like a weird metaphysical concept, but I believe people change all the time. And I've just come up with different ways of allowing that to exist, the change. So thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. And we have agreed it is okay for me to call you Jamie, though, in this interview.
Yes. Yes, it's absolutely okay.
Want the audience to know that. You know, I want to just have kind of a wide ranging, freewheeling conversation. This isn't intended to specifically be just a chat about Emily Armstrong or Scientology or the new tour. I'd like to just chat with you in general. I mean, obviously we're going to touch on all of these things, but you've got some time this evening?
I do. Yep. I am here and ready for whatever you got. I remember thinking, I was like, I talk a lot. And as many people know now, and it would be really nice to have somebody else do the talking,
Yeah.
You take me wherever you want to go. I'm here with you. And my cat's joining us sometimes. She hasn't really made up her mind. So if you see a shadow around.
What's the cat's name?
Firefly.
Okay.
Yeah. She's a real angel. She was actually at the show with us. She didn't go to the show, but she traveled with us. So
okay.
She's a good luck charm.
Awesome. I'll tell you what, I've never, in all the commentary that I've done on this channel, I've never really encountered like a whole other fan base. There's nothing, I can't really compare the videos I've been doing about Linkin Park the last couple of weeks to anything else I've ever done. There's nothing else I've ever discussed that had its own giant existing fan base that I was kind of running right into. And it's been interesting to see how many members of that fan base really appreciate the conversation and the videos that have, been occurring, and how many are like, I've got thousands of new haters. It's amazing.
Haters is a good word. Yeah,
and it's
I feel
funny
that.
because I guess one of the reasons I just used the word haters is because, I mean, it's not even necessarily that they think there's something wrong with what I'm saying. Some of them do, but many of them just don't like that it's being said. Like, okay, you said your piece, you said your piece, move on. Now now you're milking it. Now you're just piling on. Now you're being culty about the whole thing. Anyway, it's just interesting. I'm not even criticizing those who
I said the same thing. I said literally the same thing that you just said. Oh, also I have this bracelet, this yarn bracelet I wore to the concert, but it functions as like a, a statement, but also as a cat bracelet because my cat loves just attacking me. So my left hand is going to be occupied for a little bit. But I said the same thing about the Scientology fan base. I'm going to call it that because even Serge and I were talking about this, Serge Delmar and I, we were like, it's the greatest stroke of luck because what should have been two different non-connected entities are now hyper connected in a way that's not a good thing. It's not like we're over here like, yay, we're praising the transparency and the support that people are giving. It's like, it's hate. It's haters. It's like, for me, if like I recently posted on my Instagram different articles that I thought were relevant to my discussion. And on all of those articles and even my live streams, the one I did with Serge after the show, which I thought was really good, there's nothing but hate over there. There are a couple of people who will try to be kind about it and try to like keep people kind, but it doesn't work. And then they come in the DMs and like I made it public. I was even threatened by somebody claiming to be with Scientology.
I did a video about that. I saw that. That was crazy.
Show. Yeah, I know. I was surprised to see that people were picking it up so much. And then I was surprised even to see like I'm going to be really honest with you. After this entire situation, I'm not entirely sure how much of the media isn't controlled by Scientology or something as big as it, because I've been misquoted at least 3 times already. And what I'm actually talking about has not been reported on. And there are repeat offenders too. Like people even just reporting things wrong in general. And it's been really interesting to watch how there's a correlation between hate and the comments you receive and the interactions and the way that the media talks about the situation and how that amplifies those interactions. I've seen a very interesting correlation. So I said the same thing, Serge and I were like, it's crazy because we shouldn't even have like a floor, like a medium through which we could interact as being Scientologists in Linkin Park. But now there is. And I totally understand what you are describing in terms of your interactions with people. Because some people have even apologized. Some people have even come up and been like, yeah, I'm really sorry. After everything I've seen, I was wrong to treat you that way. Just another Iger, repeat offender. on my Instagram, somebody who comes over and seeds chaos and is just generally like very difficult. They came back to me after almost a year and a half, 2 years of this, and said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm going to stop bothering you. I'm just going to watch from now on." So it's a mixed bag. I totally understand that. And I can only imagine what it's like on your side with what you have to normally deal with given Scientology and escaping a cult, but also like people are already fickle enough.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
It's true. And that's not mean. That's a kind acknowledgement.
This whole thing is just fascinating. My approach on this channel in general is kind of to, in a sense, use Scientology's thirst for media attention through celebrities against it. So in other words, if Tom Cruise is getting press, my approach is cover the press that Tom Cruise is getting and use it as a way to amplify the, signal boost to the world that Scientology is a multi-billion-dollar international family-destroying human trafficking cult. And so the more press Tom Cruise gets, the better for me, because I get to piggyback on that press to get out the message about Scientology to more and more people.
I understand that too.
And so it can seem like the focus of this channel is sometimes celebrity-based, but that's because it's the best way to get attention and eyeballs to talk about the Scientology thing.
Well, also Scientology is historically known as being a celebrity cult. So I feel like they're kind of like, they're not mutually exclusive. It's not like you get Scientology and then you get celebrity. It's usually you get both hand in hand. So that's totally reasonable in my mind.
Yeah. And that's why when I was literally just messing around in my living room when I saw the headline. Someone emailed it to me. Emily Armstrong named new singer of Linkin Park. I was like, oh my God, this is what an opportunity to talk about Scientology and children in the Sea Org and children raised without parents and the abuse that Scientology covers up. And people wonder, why am I milking this? Because to me, this isn't milking. This is why the channel is here.
That's exactly what I said about my archive. People don't seem to understand that fully either. Like today I'm getting all the love because I'm posting Chester videos, which are authentic to me. I love remembering my father for who he was, not what they say he was. And I always like to see his words on it. But it's kind of in the same way that there's an apology every once in a while. I feel like a lot of people are realizing like, oh, there is no time other than the present. Like this won't happen again. It's already been a week and they're in New York acting like nothing happened.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, you kind of gotta, and I did the same thing with my media interpretation too. Cause I was like, okay, who picked me up? Variety, Rolling Stone, some of these bigger, I made it across the planet, dude. I made it to like 10 different countries. It was insane. But what was really interesting about that is how they still haven't said anything about what's going on.
Right.
There was that one little tiny thing with Emily, and then now they're getting, mustard packets thrown at them. And I'm just like, how literally, what kind of to me in my mind, I'm like, what kind of move could this possibly have been? Because people I think a lot of people don't realize, at least on my side, who Emily is and what her ties are to the church, and that it's not just a normal occurrence. This is one hell of an opportunity for everybody.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for the church. It's an opportunity for the people who talk about it. And that's what my archive was built for. I didn't just start saying things right now, just like you didn't start saying things right now. You have a huge following, a massive following on YouTube right now. It's insane. But I even had somebody in my DMs being like, that guy's a hack. Don't talk to him. And I'm like, literally, keep your opinions, bro. I'll talk to him and I'll decide if he's a hack. That's crazy. That's a crazy thing for you to say, because you would say the same thing to me in my own DMs.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had people, Linkin Park fans who at first were very appreciative of my videos. And then they were like, you had me until you brought up JAIME. Now you have no credibility. And I was like, I don't understand what's happening.
No.
So is there beef between you and the band members that pre-exists the Emily Armstrong stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've talked publicly about that too. So all these people, they were my family. I think a lot of the people who criticize me right now don't realize, and again, I'm talking about specifically the people who are criticizing me. I don't think they realize this is a family. There are communities for the band members, for their wives. There are Stan accounts. It's legendary the amount of influence this band actually has. And I've had problems in the past, you know. One of the stories I've been telling recently is my story with Brad Delson, in which, by the way, I'm not going to start telling stories before I say this, because when you're in a circumstance that is all encompassing and includes extremely affluent people, and they control every facet of your interaction and your reality around that interaction, as we can see with the way I'm being reported and whatnot. There's a power dynamic at play. There's always going to be some form of bitterness or resentment because you're being victimized by that power. And when I was going through some of the hardest times in my life, I've wanted to only rely on those positive familial memories, because it's not family. It's like family. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And so all these men were my uncles. You know, I love Joe. After the Zane Lowe interview that they just did after that first show, that LPU showcase that they did the raffle for, I was like, Joe haunts the bleeding heart. I stand for him. He's the only one with the genuine emotion in the entire thing. And then he turns around and blocks me, and after reading my messages, and refuses to take my safety seriously and refuses to acknowledge me as like Uncle Joe. And that's just been that's a symptom of a greater problem, because, you know, I have so many wonderful memories about these people that are always being challenged. Like every time I learn something more about these people and what they've been around and who they've been around and whatnot, it's like, damn, like I can't even like that experience anymore. Like a lot of like romantic people might say, well, keep it. It's just yours. But how am I supposed to keep to myself that, you know, The Hunting Party and One More Light are both Linkin Park eras that were rooted in the Clinton Foundation, which is a big thing because now Scientology is involved, and it was the Clinton administration that allowed for Scientology to exist in the first place. And it's like, there are so many big questions that need to be answered. Who are you with? Who are you not with? Why are you with them? Why are you not talking about it? Like, who are you hiding? Is my question. And we all are starting to feel like it might be my dad, but it also might be something else. And, you know, Mike slipping 2017, 2019. And these things are all super important, because it's like, wait, then that means that every memory I had, including going to Kauai with Mike Shinoda, Anna Shinoda, the Delsons, is up for debate now. It's not just a family vacation to grieve the father that was lost, the business partner, the colleague. It's something much more, arguably. I mean, if, for example, my Uncle Mike met Emily in 2017, then we have to ask real questions about what happened to Chester when he died. And, you know, especially with a cult that's known for covering up killings and assaults and trafficking and all sorts of things, and has like a serious control over the media. So, you know, with that being said, I can talk about my most recent interaction, which was now years ago, with, you know, Brad Delson. I called Brad and I told him exactly what I was going through the first time. I always say that I told Sean Dowdell twice. Well, when I told Sean Dowdell the first time, I told Brad Delson. And Brad said to me, you are such a strong, kind, compassionate, and empathetic human being. He said, you have been through so much that even grown adults can't get through it with therapy, but you have a strong head on your shoulders. I can't believe what you're going through. That is so saddening to me, but I'm proud of you. Keep pushing. Try to invest in a therapist. These are things that normal people don't deal with, and you should get help for that. At the time, I was against therapy given my experience, but that was the last conversation I had with Brad. So the fact that he hasn't responded to me and my comments on his open letter, the fact that he hasn't responded to what Emily is tied to or the implications of that, to the bigger questions that I'm asking, is very disheartening. And, you know, for him to come out and be like, well, I'm not going to be on tour, but I'm going to be on all the promotion, is kind of weird. I'm going to not be on tour, but I'm going to be writing the albums. It's like, no, I feel like that's more predatory than it's not, because it kind of sounds like you are in the business back end with someone like Bill Silva and not with the fans, who are the people who are actually accepting the art You know, they're the victims who are healing from the interaction that you're giving them as a band. So, you know, with Brad, that was pre-existing. That's probably like 2 or 3 years ago at this point. Within
Can
the
I ask you
last
a
2
question?
years.
Just
Yeah, go ahead.
just to make sure I'm following. You said when I told them what I was going through the first time, is
Yeah.
that's what you're saying was 2 to 3 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been here for a long time.
And what
yeah.
were you going through? I mean,
There's
if
a
you can
certain
say.
element, there's an element of it I am not allowed to speak on at this moment, but I will say that I was experiencing the collapse and I would say cannibalization of my entire family. That was around the time that narratives were being created around me that weren't true, that I was struggling just to be seen by my biological mother, by her family, by the band members, and of Linkin Park, of Gray Days, of you know, what would be Dead by Sunrise with Ryan Shuck and Amir Darak. There was just a lot of what I would say, what I would describe as being fallout. And I kept trying to explain to people, this isn't political. This is human. This isn't me going crazy. This is me expressing for the first time in a way that doesn't pander to your desire to be safe. I don't want to be safe anymore. I've seen things that I can't even explain at this moment. I've been through things I can't even explain, but there are a few people who might understand. So, you know, when I go to someone like Brad Delson, I'm going to them because I think they might understand. Also, as a child in a family dynamic, I'm going to the adult in my family who said, I'll be there for you if you need anything. I went and did that. And almost every single family member I've ever gone to for help has figuratively spit in my face and kicked me out because it's not the main narrative. I mean, even my own biological mother, I got into, I didn't get into shit. I got into a fist fight with my mom, my biological mom, for standing up for my partner. Yeah. They were the one hitting me. I didn't do anything. And that was the same year I met them. So that was November of 2019. In October, that same parent had gotten drunk and let loose that, and this is Elka Lindsay, my mother, had gotten drunk and let loose the knowledge on my partner that my father and the way that I perceived our relationship and our history were two different things. The thing that I knew and the thing that he was is different. I was walking around saying, my dad didn't know about me until I was 8 years old. And then he was in my life and he was the best father ever. And I'm just a sore loser, I guess, because I don't really like some of the ways he interacts with me. And for everybody else, it was like, well, shut up. You made it. And it's like, I didn't make it. This, you know, fathers still interact with their kids. It still hurts. It doesn't matter if they're famous or not. And it's just been an extremely volatile environment. And she didn't even want to acknowledge that she had let that slip. So when I realized that for many years I had been, you know, kind of like coached or groomed or brainwashed into certain positions where I was changing my own narrative and not even aware of it by the people in my life I was supposed to trust the most with my own safety and my own development, it was like, no. And then that's where all my problems with my biological mom stemmed from. So, you know, I've had a lot of problems with people in the band for a long time. I've been going through things since Chester died. It's been 7 years. And I've been kind of like reconditioned. Well, not kind of, I've been reconditioning myself to the truth and my own undiagnosed and unidentified or, you know, unresolved traumas and all these kinds of things. So, you know, to go back to the band, another issue that I had was that I actually was mentored by Anna Shinoda for a while. When my father died, I was like, oh, maybe this is the time that the family will actually be a family. It's not just about business. You know, if there was ever any reason to go beyond the, well, you know, you grew up in a machine and it's different now. And we're all just like in the business and you're just an adult, you know, we could become real family. It was this moment. And I was
How
on
did she
like,
mentor you?
well, I would go to her for advice because as a Caucasian individual in my modern context, I'm a writer, I'm a producer, I'm an artist. I'm like, I don't think I should have the right to say just anything about anything. You know, I became a wildland firefighter a few years ago just to go to the reservation so I could understand what was being done to our native peoples in Arizona. So I worked alongside them and I, you know, in a very respectful way and helped protect their land for, it was only 4 weeks, but it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. And so I've been just like trying to get this, trying to be true in my authenticity of expression and my authenticity of communication, knowing that I've been kind of backstabbed by my Caucasian upbringing as a white male from Phoenix who has a celebrity father. It's a real Cinderella story. And with that being said, I would go to her and say, well, is it okay for me to talk about mental health in this way? Is it okay for me to talk about the struggle of Indigenous and POC individuals, male or female, in this modern context, given that I'm very clearly on the offending side of the system?
Oh, is Anna Shinoda Native American?
No, but I would just ask her because
okay.
she's in the industry, like how do people handle that? What's the conversation around that? And so I would go to her with my scripts and ask her to read, my literature. I had written like a 7-part postmodern kind of Thomas Pynchon styled novella that I was working on at the time of my college graduation in 2018. I was working on my A Chant script, which I worked really hard to get a seal of authenticity from Barbara Van Dalen of Given Hour, because she was a leading expert in her field at the time. And I was like, look, I just want to make sure that I am representing paranoid schizophrenia and the schizophrenic spectrum authentically. I'm not trying to do anything spectacular, or, I'm not trying to gain money or anything like this, or fame. This is literally a mental health resource. Something I actually ended up, after a 3-year production process, realizing was a total embodiment of my internalized complex traumas. So when you watch that movie, it's me now. So it's not the poem, it's me. I resonated with the poem because that was my life, and look where we are. I can't say I was wrong. And so there were a couple of things I went to Anna about. Some of it was spiritual. We went on a couple of like vision quests together. We were in touch with a family medium for a time, and we were out looking for, on wild goose chases for remnants of Chester's legacy that he may have left in the present when he was taken unexpectedly, because he didn't leave a letter, but even that psychic had said that he had left something for me. So we were looking and looking and looking, and it got to the point where, like I did with Brad, like I did with Sean, like I did with a couple of other people, but I mean, Bradford Delson, Sean Dowdell, I went to Anna and said, hey, this is happening. I need help. And from that point on, she was like not even just a mentor, but like a confidant. Like I went to her as like my aunt, and I said, hey, this is really hurting me. And she said she had nothing to do with that situation, that, we were safe because she didn't have anything to do with that situation. And so I just kind of like trusted her. And then when it came back in a second wave and got even worse than that, she told me, well, Jamie, I don't think you should tell your truth. I don't think that you should share it. Honestly, I think that if you are really serious about being an advocate, you should change all the names. If you do tell anybody, you should fictionalize it. You should allow the people in your life who are causing you this misery to just be the way they are, because they're just people and you just need to see them that way. And I was like, well, I do see them as people. That's the whole point, is that I'm here and I've been here this long in this conflict, resolving or attempting resolution and constructive solution with these people for years now, and it's not happening. So, I can't do that. And she was just like, well, I think that you're wrong, and I think that you should be doing it this way. And I was like, how could you say that as an author of young adult novels on dealing with trauma, on the impacts of trauma? How could you inform whole generations of children to say something when they see something, and then turn around and say, well, because these people are people I'm involved with and it happens to be a sensitive subject, just leave them out of it and lie about it if you have to? That felt really gross and icky to me. It felt very much so like the situation I went through with Mandel Moreno recently, when Samantha Bennington came out of nowhere and accused me of essaying my cousin, and accusing me of being adopted, and accusing me of having no blood relation to my father, and then stripping my brother away from me for the second time after she told me she would never do it again last year. So it's like, she says she's not going to go do it, and then she goes and does it immediately, which, by the way, people can hate on me as much as they want about this situation, but let's not all forget that Samantha Bennington, which, yeah, I'm going to point fingers right now because she's been absolutely careless with her power and her responsibility. She claims to have written half of Meteora and half of Hybrid Theory.
Hmm.
And Mike Shinoda has nothing to say about that. Nobody has any hate for her, but they want to come to me when I'm saying I'm holding the investigation, and then I have actual real life problems with my family members.
And is Samantha your biological mom?
No, Samantha actually is Chester's first wife. My mom and my dad were not ever in an official relationship, apparently. They were more like high school buddies. I would use
So
other
Samantha's
words.
his ex-wife, and Talinda was his wife when he passed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he has two
so
wives.
how did help me understand this? How did Samantha? You mentioned so Samantha. Now that I know who she is specifically,
Yeah.
How did she take your brother away?
Well, she's never, apparently my Aunt Toby, which is my father Chester's sister, and my grandmother Susan, who is Chester's mother. They all, my entire life, apparently have, and this is their claim as of the 6th death anniversary in July of last year. They all never considered me to be Chester's biological son. They will claim, they will die on the hill, that there were no DNA tests taken. If there were no conclusive results, that Chester just gave in and decided to help two helpless children. He decided to adopt me, and he decided to adopt my younger brother, Isaiah, who's also one of my abusers. And it was kind of insane because when Samantha came back around last year, when I started doing, more live stuff, more public stuff, I was about to sign on to her podcast. I was about to be the first episode of Samantha's podcast with her journalist friend, Cece Woods. And I had just talked to her about that. The morning that happened, I had sent her a screenshot of a tweet that I had gotten from somebody she had made years in the past around the time that Chester had died, maybe 2018, 2019, where she claimed that I was adopted and basically she didn't like me and nobody should. And I was like, hey, Sam, this is really, heart wrenching. Like, I literally was the one to restart our relationships. I was the one to offer to apologize to Draven in public, even if you didn't respond. I was the one to acknowledge your grief because she's lost a lot of people recently in her life. She's had to hold funerals and other things like that. And, it was just really disheartening to see that this tweet existed. And she was like, well, I was angry and I can't explain why I said that. But, I'm going to say I was angry. I'll never do it to you again. So this entire time, she's been just trying to undermine my legitimacy as Chester's son. And she went as far as to only a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month now, say that there needs to be a unified front for Chester and the reinvestigation or the opening of the first investigation into his death, that I do not count as his voice because I am his non-biological adopted son. And that in reality, I'm just kind of crazy, which, by the way, I also received information recently, which these people will stay anonymous because contrary to popular belief, I do practice discretion. There's a narrative now going around that I was diagnosed schizophrenic on the Samantha, Toby, Susan side, which is a flat out lie. Nobody in my family cared enough to get me diagnosed with anything. I believe I have been
Wait, when you say diagnosed on that side, what does that mean?
That means that on that side of the family, somebody's spinning tales about how I was diagnosed as schizophrenic and that I don't remember things and that I just freak out and attack people, which is not true. I have never been diagnosed for anything. And she's over there trying to undermine this relationship that we have, me and Draven, the relationship that we all started over again last year by claiming that I'm adopted. In that way, she's able to take away the legitimacy of any of the claims that I'm making. And it's ridiculous. And then she's also telling people that I was diagnosed schizophrenic, which is all lies. So
for something like paternity, I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world these days. I mean, even 6-7 years ago, it was the easiest thing in the world to test that. Why wouldn't they have ever tested that if it was in question?
Well, they had to have, because by definition, Chester Bennington had to agree to be my father if he was paying child support, which he did for years. So he had to have either tested positive or he had to have either given in and just admitted that he wanted me. In either case, I'm his son. And I think there are a lot of really interesting things to be said, even the way it's reported. Like, somebody said I went to war with Mike. I didn't go to war with Mike. I've been here since last year. I've been here for 10 years. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, it feels like Yeah. You know what? Samantha Bennington was somebody who offered me money, resources, mental health resources. She offered me therapy, connections in the industry, family last year before she took it away. And during that conversation, she says she still has Chester's dreadlocks from Gray Days era, and that she would be willing to give them to me so I could have a DNA test performed in the modern day to prove it all. But guess what? She blocked me, restricted me, kicked me out of the conversation, had her goons come after me. Which is just another Iger I mentioned earlier. That's one of her goons. They came over and were seeding chaos because they believe Samantha and not me. And but they changed their mind after the Linkin Park show. And so Samantha has offered to give me DNA to do the test, but she has also taken it away the second that it's inconvenient for her and her narrative.
I see a comment here. I want to ask you if this is accurate. Karen Brewer says, he is Chester's firstborn son. He is listed as Chester's biological son in his will. Is that accurate?
Hi, Karen. Yeah. Yes, it is. It's totally accurate. And he also is in multiple interviews, some of which I've posted. I posted it last year. I was all grumpy. I was in bed. I was like, oh my God, these people are so fucking annoying. And I put up a video and it was Chester being like, yeah, he looks just like me and my mom. That kid is literally my kid. He's with Ryan Shuck in the interview. He's doing a Dead by Sunrise interview. He's like, yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. He said some very interesting things about women, which I will not repeat here, but to each his own. And so, yeah. And by the way, I know Karen. Karen, you're wonderful. I love you. Thank you.
Oh, you do?
Here. Oh, yeah, I do. Karen's part of the core archive group. She's wonderful, thoughtful human being. And so thank you. She is the void. Here we are. And so, yeah, you know, no, it's in writing. It's in his own words. They can go ahead and say all they want. X, Y, and Z. Chester didn't do that. Yes, he did. He said it in his own words. Go find the interview. Stop talking shit to me. You don't know what you're talking about. Go away. And that's pretty much what it comes down to, is like, even people right now are like, you're a disgrace to your family. It's like, how? Everything I say, I bring evidence to the table. You guys are wilding.
You said something earlier I want to pick up on, because by the way, like my parents were never married. That's why I have the two last names. Smith is my mom's name. Levin is my dad's name. My dad was actually a musician. So yeah, and I did not grow up with my dad. Like, so, you know, my mom raised us, and we would, I think when we were like 5 or 6, we started visiting our dad for a couple weeks every summer. And that's just the way it was. And for the time, I presently have a great relationship with my dad, but even at that time, even though we were only actually see him a couple weeks a year, for what it was, he was an amazing dad. You know, like, he was great. He was a good presence in our lives. You mentioned something earlier. It sounded like, what was, did you not have a relationship with your dad for the first 8 years? It sounded like you said something like that.
Correct.
How did that work out? Just tell me.
So I don't know these one of the reasons thank you for asking. I appreciate your question on that. And I appreciate you sharing that part of yourself with me. Because you'll probably relate to this in some ways or others. My mother Elka was a single mother. There were a couple, she still to this day cannot tell me how I came to be, what her relationship was with my father. She'll tell me that's none of your business. That was before you. That's my life. And I'm like, how? Do you not see my flesh and blood? Do you not see me sweating and bleeding and dying over here? That man and his life, I'm entitled to it. Your life, I'm entitled to it. I'm your child. Which, by the way, they said to me when I was younger, anything that you have a question about, I'll be honest with you in the future. When you get old enough, some of these things are just not for children. Here we are, mommy. I asked you questions and you don't want to answer the question. And then you want to tell me I'm a fucking asshole because I said, I'm done with you giving me lies, just serving me straight lies. No, this is what Jamie would have been all their life if they weren't stuffed down by the abusive, toxic relationships that they were born into.
You could at least make up some acceptable answer. It's so crazy to be like, I'm not going to tell you that. It's sinister. It's dark. It's mysterious.
Yeah, she's like, I left that area of my life so I'd never have to go back because I hate that version of myself. And so you are not ever allowed to see it. And I understand that. But, and they'll say, a lot of people that I know will die on the hill of, they have no empathy. They didn't treat me like a human being. They didn't even try to have a conversation. I tried conversations with these people, all of them, for like 7 years now. That's a long time to be given effort and energy when it's not reciprocated. So with that being said, when I was a child, I had many father figures. And I never had a father. In fact, the closest thing to a father I had at the time was around the time that I asked about having a father, when I was 5.5 to 6.5 years old, was my little brother Isaiah, who's a year younger than me. I mentioned him just earlier, just a little bit ago. His father, Jeremy Black, was the closest thing I had. And he was extremely aggressive. Everybody was on using substance. That's just the way it was in downtown Phoenix in the 90s. And Jeremy actually beat both of us so severely that CPS was called. And then he jumped ship and ran for 10 years.
Wow.
Evaded the police for 10 years. And then the next father figure was the older brother of my mom's boyfriend during high school who had died by suicide. They hooked up, and she was like, helping with his kids. And he had previously been in a marriage. He got divorced. He was now in the family. It was actually him. He was the reason that Chester moved back to Arizona when I was in high school and middle school, because Chester moved us all out to Newport as a family. And then his ex-wife had it mandated that he be within a certain mileage of her in Arizona. So we ended up, after 3 months of living in Newport next to my father, we all had to move back to Arizona. And then Chester decided to go back to Arizona, which was how he got into that situation from 2013 to 2014, where he was kind of stuck between Arizona and California as a professional. And so that's an important thing to say. But also, he went to jail. He got caught for violating his parole on like dozens of accounts. And he went to jail immediately. The CPS came for the second time, and they tossed up the entire house, and he went to jail as like the last time I saw him before the whole Chester thing erupted. And so by the time that I even asked about Chester, me and my little brother Isaiah, whose story I'm not telling for him, he can always tell his own story, but this is my story too. He asked Chester I asked my mom, I'll back up. When I was 5.5, 6.5 years old, I said, "Mom, do I have a dad?" She said, "Yes, I'll get back to you." It turned out that Chester had just broken even with Hybrid Theory. They were touring it, which was a very long tour for those of you who don't know. And he ended up having to meet me in between the tours. So it was during the time that Chester was going to do the Grey Days reunion concert for Bobby Benish, a band member from the second iteration of Grey Days who received a brain tumor without his knowledge. He just like one day had a brain tumor, and his family couldn't financially handle the burden. So he was going to do a show for them. And then Linkin Park was called back into the studio for Meteora. It was that same time that Chester came and met me. And so at about that time, Chester came into the house, a year after I asked for him during the break. And he was like, holy shit, you're my kid. Like, for real, you're my kid. That's crazy. Like, there's no denying this. And my little brother Isaiah looked up at him and said, "Are you my dad too?" And as a kid, it didn't even cross my mind like, oh wait, we both forgot Jeremy Black, and my mom never did anything to fucking help us through that. And so as it's coming around to Chester, it's like I'm coming from this extremely toxic environment where my PTSD is already so aggressive. I'm biting my nails down to the blood, and I can't sleep, and I'm having night terrors, and I'm like basically being possessed at night, and I'm suffering home invasions, and my mom's doing drugs with the people she's buying them from. She went from being dependent on speed to being dependent on methamphetamine, which is why she, at the age of about 7.5 or 8, gave us up to her sister, me and my brother. And then I was kind of shuffled in between Chester and my aunt and my uncle for a long time, so I went from like this kind of like quasi-Baptist evangelist household, which is very, very tough in the first place. I mean, those two together is insane. Taking Baptist Christian beliefs and evangelic Christian beliefs and trying to mix them together is just, I don't know who the hell thought to do that.
Who was that? Was that Jeremy and your mom? Were the Baptist and
No, that's all my mom's side. All my mom's side are Christians. I have family from like the deep South in Pennsylvania. They practice like strict Baptist. They brought it over to Arizona. Then my grandma, my mom's mom, Cheryl, she wanted to be evangelist. So we ended up becoming non-denominational evangelist Christians who also had a background in the Baptist beliefs, because my mom was a hybrid of those two beliefs. And so on top of that, there was substance use, and then there was all this debauchery going on. And then I met Chester, and it was like, wait, all your beliefs don't really mean anything. You're going into Satan's domain. You're going to go to the Luciferian side of the thing. So, you know, all of a sudden your dad's the rock star, and then you're stuck in this house. And by the way, my mom's sister and her husband were doomsday preppers by all definitions. So they ended up ended up making their own compound. That's what I'm saying.
You muted yourself by accident. You hit that button on your mic. No, the mic, you know, the mic's got that little button on it. You're still muted. Do you see the icon on the screen? It'll say you'll figure it out there. It's still muted. I know you can hear. Oh, there you go. Boom. You did it.
That was so weird. I did that on its own. The button wasn't pushed. That was in the software. Can you? It
was Satan. I'm telling you, it's Satan.
Like, bro, shut the fuck up. We already told you to stop this shit.
So okay. Did you grow up like a true believer in the evangelical Baptist faith or faiths?
I grew up, I believe, as a child on the spectrum with severe PTSD, and so by the time that I made it to like middle school, I was definitely indoctrinated. I think I was very fearful. You know, I had a lot of conversations at night about like, well, what does hell look like? You know, am I doing the right thing? You know, I definitely went through that religious extremism that a lot of people face, especially in youth when you don't have other things to lean on or a mind of your own necessarily. Like a lot of, like I said, you know, I was coerced into believing a certain version of my life was true when it wasn't, at least 3 or 4 times. And I would say religion was definitely a vehicle for that. It was definitely a vessel for getting me on one track over another. And I kind of I went from this kind of like, I kind of realized that the toxic stress of being religious was too much for me. And I would actively walk out of church. There was one moment where my mom, Elka, actually chased me down at Sun Valley in Mesa, I believe, or Chandler, Arizona. We were there, and I was like, you know, I don't believe any of this. I don't believe the way we're being interacted with is right. I don't believe the scripture is right. I don't want to be here. I'd rather be with my friends. Like, I was a teenager at this point, but she chased me out of the church. And so like when I go to the show and people are like, wow, you're just really loud and annoying. It's like, bro, I'm always this way. I'm just loud about what I believe in. And so like, I'm walking out of church and she's like, get back here. You know, she's grabbing me by my arm, trying to pull me back in. I'm like, I don't want to go to your fucking church. I don't want to fucking be here. You made me do this. Okay.
I got to ask you this. Because I remember even at a young age, I remember the youngest I can remember having this thought is probably about 8 years old in the 3rd grade, 7 or 8 years old, being really struggling with the idea, coming to terms with the fact that I was deeply, deeply uncomfortable with people knowing anything about my family's involvement in Scientology. And it just makes me want to ask you the question. Do you have any memories of struggling to reconcile this belief in a heaven or a hell and what you had to do to get into heaven with what you could see was your mom's behavior? I don't know. Is this something that you remember ever struggling with, trying to make it make sense or anything?
Yes, because, and I was just talking about this with somebody who I've been privileged to revitalize a relationship with. I didn't know I needed that kind of interaction, and they came along and they were like, I see you. And I was like, really? Thank you. You know? And I was talking to them about my mom, and, you know, I have a hard time seeing the bad things that people do as a child, especially because I always believe the best in people. I'm very much like my father in that regard. Like, I've always been an optimist, always been like, well, I think people change all the time. I think people always have the capacity to learn. I'm a living example of that. But, you know, with that being said, my mom is an extremely forceful person. All the people in my life are extremely forceful people. They're all what you might call, you know, in tarot, you get the devil card. You know, you get that extreme personality card. And it's like, yeah, there are egos involved. And like I said it, you know, earlier, it's about being convenient. It's not really about the truth. So there are a lot of things in my life as a child. You know, I've always been exceptionally I would say, intelligent and perceptive. And that's not egoic on my part. That's a fact. You know, I mean, I'm here right now as put together as I am because I did that to myself. Not because I got help, not because I received community, not because I was getting handouts. It's because the last 7 years I said, no, I'm turning around. This is wrong. And I need to, you know, flip the switch on this. This inertia that's been pushing me will no longer be my motivating force. I'm going to motivate it. And that's what led me to where I am. And so, you know, I've been here. When I made my grand religious decision of I'm agnostic now, these people I cannot allow to be the ones to make decisions for me, including my father. I was 12 years old. Everything I'm doing right now, I've been building towards for the last like almost 16 something years. And that was a conscious decision, 12 years old. That was not just what happened when I was 12 is that my dad, we all moved back to Arizona. I went to high school. I grew up and I said, you know what? I want the space to be authentically myself and to truly embody everything that I believe in, but I can't do that. I have a lot of pressures against me. And I'll get back to the actual question. I remember it. You know, I'm a celebrity's kid. After a certain point, people don't see you. You know, it's like, I imagine the struggle that someone like Willow Smith or Jaden Smith might face when out in public doing their thing. You know, there's always going to be Will Smith and Jada Smith behind them. There's always going to be, hey, I know your parents, you know, like I'll even have people in my DMs about Chester just being like, I miss you so much. And it's beautiful. And I love that they can have that interaction, but like, I'm also not Chester. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying there's something to acknowledge in that, right? Like, right. Even when I am myself and I'm still fighting to be myself publicly on my own platform, which I did not ask for all these haters to come and interact with. And I will call them haters because it's silly as fuck and it makes me laugh. You know, it's just like, that's part of the energy. So, you know, when I was really, really young, it kind of came to me like, all I want is community and I want to be able to do for me what I am doing for others. And that's all I've said since I've been back. And I've just been able to be in my energy. So, you know, circling back to your question on, you know, that kind of like maybe answers a little bit more of your question about whether there was beef with people in the band beforehand. The answer is yes. There are people in my life with egos who have powers beyond my control, and I've been a victim of them until this moment. And even still, I'm a victim of them. But also to go back to your question about, well, did you have that moment of trying to reconcile these things, this religion and this, you know, this practical application of personality? The answer is yes. Like for me, it was so hard. I remember being in the car seat. That's how young I remember being. When I'm talking about Elka, I remember being in the car seat and being driven insane by her incessant need to tell me that I did something, that I was the problem in the situation, even though I was just expressing my emotions. And she pretty much pushed it until I folded. She was like, you did it. You did it. You did it. I was like, no, I didn't. And then finally it was like, okay, fine. Then I fucking did. And I remember that was like one of the first times I caught what people would now call gaslighting in the flesh. And I was like, wait, but I did do this differently. And I did have a different perspective on what happened. And I'm just in a car seat, dude. I'm young. Like I'm that aware. And I'm like, no, next time she does that, I'm going to tell her, which is what I've been doing on my platform. Right. And I remember going through a period where it was the most painful bone grinding process. Like I was crushed into dust. It was like, no, you're wrong. Every time I brought it up, I'd be like, well, you said this last time, but last time I had this perspective and this is what's going on. You're wrong. Crushed. You're wrong. Crushed. Every time it happened, to the point where I was just like, okay, then I'm just wrong. And that's the way it's going to be. If I have a truth, I keep it to myself. And I remember by the time that I hit 12 years old, I had that realization of like, well, there are going to be people I tell things to, and there are people that I'm not going to tell people like things to. Not even my friends in high school knew I was suicidal. My father didn't know. None of my family knew, because I was always like this, because that's all I knew. My father is Chester Bennington. This is all he does. Even when he's sad. Hey man, I like your glasses. What's that one video going around when he's singing for Chris Cornell at the Jimmy Kimmel event? Hey, I love your glasses, man. He's like, thanks. They hide the tears. Well, it come to find out, Jim Digby, the tour manager, did a mental health event where he literally claimed that they asked they said, oh, Chester's being that guy again during this performance. They were like, oh, that demon's out again. He needs to take his glasses off and he needs to like look at the people because this will help us sell the album. Like he needs to stop fucking doing this. And then they went to him. Jim tells the story. They went to him and they said, Chester, take off your glasses, face the fans. This is all good. You're doing a beautiful thing. Just go do it. And he said, go fuck yourself. And he went on stage the way he did. And he had that performance. And I think that's amazing that so many people in Chester's life can say they had those kinds of experiences, these coercive moments, and then turn around and be like, well, we had no idea. Chester was at his best. He was at his greatest. No, he wasn't. You said he was at his best. The same way you said I went to war with Mike Shinoda. The same way you said I wrote a song about it. The same way you said that the memorial concert was this year and not in 2017. The same way you said that I was okay with the band after misquoting me following my live after the show. These are all things that are causing problems. These are all things that are making things worse. It's the way it's reported, the way that it's internalized. You have fans coming over and literally demanding entitlement to people they've never met, they will never know, and a family they've never been a part of, as if they were the ones there the entire time. And it's like, bro, you're 35 from Kansas and you're a fucking gym nut. Shut the hell up. I don't give a fuck if you think I'm a pussy. Obviously, I don't. So get out of here. And it's just like, I have these interactions where I'm like, kind of validated in two things. I came back after the show and I was like, wow, I really got to be right. All these years I'm being told, no, you're not right. You're crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist. You deserve to be silenced. You deserve the punishment you received. And it's like, wait, but then I went to the concert and they literally did it in front of my face. They literally did not acknowledge these things. And then they're just going to go to NY as if they don't know that they did that. So it's like, it's all a very strugglesome thing. It's a very tiresome thing. It's like, you get, when you have media to cover you properly, it's a different story. But when you're just at the whim of like all the egos in your lives, like lives plural, because I don't just live one life. Like I said, you just got to call it what it is. So yeah, I've had those instances. I've had a lot of weird shit happen to me mentally that it's hard to explain.
Was your dad religious?
He said so, but I think everybody who was born and raised in what used to be the Derry, Arizona, downtown Phoenix, but now is metropolitan Phoenix, would say like, oh, I'm a God believer. I believe I'm a God-fearing man. I mean, I used to go to church with Chester at Cornerstone in Newport Beach, but, it was kind of one of those weird things. At one point, I remember asking Elko, I was like, is my dad religious? Like, is he a Christian like us? Because, you've been in a cult. When you're religious, it matters to the people around you if those people buy into it. So I was thinking like, wow, I'm Christian at this moment because that's what my family is, and the understanding of people and the understanding of forgiveness. I'm Christian. And my mom said, well, you should ask him. And I asked him and he goes, well, yes, I'm Christian for sure. And then, there's an uptick in church activity. And then all of a sudden there's no church. There was kind of this and time where it was like Chester actively tried to go to church for like a year or two. Really, it wasn't that long.
I see. Yeah. So was your dad open with you about his struggles with mental health?
If a catty joke is open. I think now it's interesting for me to watch back on his interviews and go, oh, he wasn't joking. Because he was such a trickster. He was not allowed to. I always bring it up, and I'll bring it up again because somebody forgot it on their greatest hits album. I'm not allowed to say sir. That's Mike Shinoda on The Hunting Party, and that's pretty much the vibe of Chester. It's like, okay, he's going to joke about this because there's nowhere else to put it. If he were serious, it would be taken about as seriously as if he was fucking off about it. So, Chester's always hypersexualized, hyper aggressive. And in my mind, that's his coping mechanism. When you're being beat up by a gang of people who are all like, no, you fucking deserve this shit. You're a piece of shit. Nobody cares about you. And you're like, yeah, fuck me, right? It's that kind of energy for like almost every interview that I see with him. And I think that's important because something I wasn't able to see, but now I'm able to see, and not only myself, but people I know, like Mike Shinoda and also my father, is the way in which certain energies arise in their bodily interactions, expressions, given that they're lying or hiding something. Like when Mike Shinoda recently, after that Zane Lowe interview, went onto the radio station and let slip that he met Emily in 2007. 2019. It was definitely 2019, but he clearly said 2017. It's like, I've been through too many issues with you and people around you to know that that wasn't what you just said. You said 2017. That's really interesting. And I think that needs to be handled with more finesse, because people are just going, well, he's tired. No, he's not. He just started. He just started his entire New World tour. He just started the album. Baby, he's back. No. There's no warm up. Emily doesn't get a warm up. They had 8 months to practice. No, when you go out and you're selling that product, you better be the best you can be. There's no time to slip, not with the way that things need to be addressed and they're not being addressed, not with the energy in the room. Hell no. Somebody's dead.
Yeah.
Foundation
prior to the whole Emily Armstrong thing.
Yeah.
When is the last time you had meaningful contact with any of the band members?
I left the third or fourth part of I'm going to tell my story to who I want to, how I want to, when I want to, because that's my God-given right. And you seem to forget who I am and who I'm related to and what the situation actually is. Response to Anna Shinoda, like, she never responded.
Uh-oh. What's happening? Okay, so let's see. You can probably still see me, Jamie. Oh, there you are.
It took off
What the?
my cam again. It took both of them off this time. They don't want me to be heard or seen.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
Not today, Satan. I'm tired of your bullshit.
Okay, so you gave the last message you delivered to Anna Shinoda. Yeah. How long ago would that have been?
I feel like that was last year, but you know what?
Okay.
I'm all big on receipts, so let me pull my phone out. Thank you for asking, Aaron. Mike Shinoda, I haven't talked to in years. He's not the kind of guy to reach out and just try to figure things out. He has no care in the world that me and his wife had a falling out and that she was asking people to do exactly what he's asking people to do right now. But with that being said, let's see. Anna Shinoda was, in conclusion, was dropped 6/23/23. So June last year, before I went public. I sent her a bunch of songs because I'm annoying like that. I always got a playlist following me around. It was a bunch of different kinds of songs. It was New Man and Message in a Hammer by Obongiar, which is what a wonderful artist. Standing Ovation by Little Sims, what a wonderful artist. And then 2 songs by Manchester Orchestra called No Rule and Letting Go. And then I pointed out that the on the 26th, I did the Fighting with Myself music video, but she didn't respond at all. Like, she has not responded to any of this. None of the Linkin Park management has responded to this. Somebody I worked for, Bill Silva, no contact. I reached out to him, texted him only a couple months ago. He responded when I asked for tickets and safety to the show. He said nothing. Ryan DeMarty, nothing. I talked to all the Machine Shop, which of course Anna owns Machine Shop Records. Let's see here. Brad Delson. Let's see if I got his text in here. I think I deleted his text because I reached out to him a couple of times in the last 2 years just to ask him how he was doing, and he never responded. And so yeah, it was June of last year that I last talked to Anna, and she was not talking to me at that point because what had happened was she came to me on my birthday. And she was like, in May, and she was like, I hope you have a great life. I hope you have a great birthday. And I was like, how the hell could you say anything like that to me after what we just went through and after all that that's insane to me that you would think that that was an appropriate response. And this is why. And I gave her a 4-part response like I do with everything and everyone else. So, yeah, it was just kind of weird. I was like, okay, well then she's
Okay.
not going to respond. And then
Yeah.
shortly after that, Kyle Kirshner came out. So, you know, very interesting stuff was overlapping while I was going out public last year. Yeah.
What was your first introduction to anything Scientology related? It wasn't just Emily, right? That wasn't the first
Hell no.
time. Yeah.
No.
What was it? I'm trying to know.
You're insane for standing out in front of this. Just like Serge. I told Serge, I was like, bro, you're Serge and Michael. I was like, dude, you guys are wild. Like, we're out here after the show doing a live stream unprotected after being threatened. Like, they said they find us outside the show. Like, that's crazy. So, or me outside the show. Give me some love from Mike and friends. And you know, I feel like a really good place to start with that is that I've been researching cults since Chester died. That's a fact. I was writing a film, title of which is total gibberish. I call it Talis Falhije, which to me is just the essence of total creation. You know, you just take the language and the dimension that you exist in and literally remap purely, or, you know, organically, authentically, you know, unique to my perspective. And that was my whole goal was, and this is actually a script that I used to share with Anna and ask her opinion about writing certain perspectives, because I was like, I want to reinvent horror. I don't think people are acknowledging that the truest fear that we have is ourselves, and that our society is the grounds through which this hate and this evil that we are so fearful of and love to fetishize in media comes from. I want to find a way to talk consciously about these things. And so in the same way that I set out to make a chant as a mental health resource, I set out to make Talis Falhije this like massive hour film, you know, Twin Peaks style. And I was working on it for years and years, and it never was finished, but I have a good version that I was sending around to Netflix and stuff like that. And it was unfinished. I was just kind of looking for like some room to get some, you know, maybe some funding so that I could keep making art that heal people. And so when I researched the cult mentality for this movie, I kind of researched like every presidential cabinet, our foreign affairs as a capitalist society and also as a militant society. I was looking at the perspectives of indigenous peoples. Like I said, this was all around the same time. I was genuinely trying to, sorry, my cat has commandeered me. She's pulling really hard. But you know, I wanted to hear as many perspectives as possible, and not just from scholars of cult mentality and behavior, but also from those who have been victimized by it. So this is a huge full circle to be here with you right now. By the way, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And I started reading a book called Helter Skelter, which was written by the prosecutor of the Charlie Manson case. And just in case you all didn't know, Charlie Manson and his hippie cult are some of the most polarizing figures and interactions in Hollywood history. And there was a guy who wrote a book. I circled around to this book years after the fact, which happens to be divine timing, like all else. I mean, for me to be here right now as prepared as I am, and to have Emily thrown into the picture haphazardly by one of the biggest cults, viable cults in America is like, or internationally even, is like insane. But, you know, I was reading Helter Skelter, and then I found this other guy's work, The Secret History of CIA, the 1960s, and Charlie Manson. He went on Joe Rogan. He went on and did a bunch of,
I saw that.
About it.
I saw the,
yeah. And he was run out of the fucking house. He was run out of the entire society. They were like, no, it's not. It's true. I've been around that area. I know people like that. I have been researching these things for years now, and people say I just pop up, but I pull up. I don't pop up. I'm an ever stable essence. If I see some shit in my research and my interactions, I'm gonna come talk to you about it. And this is all this is. So, you know, with me, I was so resonant with it that I would literally grind my teeth and the people around me, I would tell them like, hey, I need to remove my teeth because that's how bad they hurt, not realizing because of my CPTSD and other conditions that was not normal. So when I detoxed and I started breathing and I calmed down and developed my meditation practice and what I call my practice now, my color meditation, I realized just how much of that was resonant, how much of that resonant energy I was being affected by. And so when I found out about this guy who made this book, Chaos, I was like, holy shit,
Yeah.
Operation Chaos is what we're living through. MK Ultra isn't an experiment. It's a cultural movement, and they use the civilians as test subjects. Right now we're going through it. It's called MK Ultra. It's not anything else. We live in the Cold War. They tell you it stopped in 91. That's not true. It's a fact, you know? And I think that the band does such weird culty shit. Like, why would you have your first show on 9/11?
That was a little weird. I will admit
It's a little
that.
weird.
But now the
Yeah.
book Chaos and everything, and even the Helter Skelter, none of that really gets into Scientology, right?
No, but the idea is that there are multiple celebrity cults in Hollywood, and that Scientology is one of them. I actually went on a large documentary perspectives, you know, again, administrator perspectives, scholar perspectives, victim perspectives. And so I was watching documentaries on Scientology. I was watching documentaries on a ton of things, Waco, whatnot. You know, the Waco situation was insane. There are so many things about what's happened in this country to free thinking people. I'm not saying that all these people are undeserving of their circumstance or that they didn't participate in the problem in a certain way. I'm saying that there is a very real social and media and political effort to silence and control individuals and narratives. And that's just what it is. I'm a victim of it right now. And so when it comes to Scientology, I was actually kind of blown away because Dianetics and L. Ron Hubbard and his philosophies, they've kind of just like circled me. I like to divine certain objects by just going with the flow, seeing what the environment will bring to me. Multiple times, Scientology has just landed on my plate. So all these years later, it's so freaking fascinating to have been not only right in my research, but also right in my perspective. Because here we are, Scientology is literally embedded. It has Park, one of the biggest band brands of all time. And I think that that is fascinating. And so I'm familiar in some ways with, you know, life contracts and some of the policies and some of the actions taken on behalf of the church. But I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I feel like, though, the more I hear about it, especially when I was talking to Serge, you know, knowing some of your context, because I've seen some of your videos before. Now I looked at you and I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to talk to Aaron. It just is odd how it all timed together. It timed up. It's like we're supposed to be here having this conversation. And but yeah, I have a history with just researching occult behavior in general and trying to apply it to my real life situation, trying to apply it to mainstream media, trying to apply it to these varying dimensions in which it's applicated, this mentality, these ideologies.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons I asked you earlier, you know, was your father open with you about his struggles with mental health? Is because it seems to me, and I say this as like a dilettante of Linkin Parkism. Honestly, it just seems to me that the fans of the band, that these songs, this music, the lyrics have such deep meaning. And a lot of the meaning is reflective of mental health, struggles with mental health, internal struggles with dealing with trauma, childhood trauma. And I know there's still a lot of Linkin Park fans who are like, shut up about the Scientology stuff. We don't care if she was born and raised in Scientology. We don't care if her mother was raised in, it still works for David Miscavige, the freaking cult leader. But it's like, if I was a Linkin Park fan, now I like their music, but I don't really call myself a fan of any band. I'm a dilettante when it comes to music, okay? But if I was a hardcore Linkin Park fan, it would honestly be important to me that the lead singer of the band doesn't believe in mental illness, doesn't believe in depression, doesn't believe in therapy, doesn't believe in counseling, believes that someone who is a victim of child trauma did something in their past life to deserve that, to pull that in. Like, these things do matter. At least
I say
to
so.
me, they matter. If I was a hardcore fan, I think it would matter. From your perspective, what exactly were your thoughts on the Emily Armstrong hire, and why?
There's a lot to say about the Emily in the room. E is for elephant. Well, first of all, like I said, I don't have contact with the band like that. I'm extremely worried about Rob Borden. I don't think it's appropriate for Bradford Delson to have given a full-blown letter of approval for the band, which also signaled his stepping away from the touring aspect of the band, X, Y, and Z, because it's weird that Brad did that, but Rob hasn't. And I think that matters in this Emily conversation because I wasn't made aware of what the band had in store. The band has repeatedly said that they had no intention of even being here in the first place, but then there's been contradictory evidence that's just appeared almost instantaneously because it was seeded years ago to prove the opposite. It's like, you guys were always here. And so the whole thing is kind of weird because it seems like there are power dynamics at play that exclude the actual, what I believe should be true influence of the co-founders. Because a lot of people would like to sit here and criticize me for being upset with Mike Shinoda. And I promise this will focus on Emily soon. But the band is not Mike Shinoda's band. Fort Minor, The Rising Tide, Post Traumatic, those are Mike's solo projects. I've antagonistically claimed that Post Traumatic is actually a Linkin Park album and that they've never stopped Linkin Park. It's just been undercover for multiple years, experimenting with their process and on their audience using techniques that I believe are grooming techniques. And I've spoken at length about in my Euphoria and post-traumatic highlights on my Instagram, but also in my YouTube live streams. I feel like it's important to acknowledge that Bradford Delson, Rob Borden, and Mike Shinoda are all co-founders of Linkin Park, whether or not Rob Borden is a part of Machine Shop Records or not. I think that it's important to recognize that Mike Shinoda has been the only one to say anything about Rob Borden, and that we're all supposed to just take his word for it when we have copious amounts of evidence to prove that Mike Shinoda has been manipulative and he has been deceitful in this entire process, and that he plans on utilizing the influence garnered through that deceit to his greatest benefit. I feel like it is frustrating to see Brad give his letter because why is that so hard for Rob? You know, we've seen Mike lie about Rob multiple times. Now they're not. I was just told at the Brooklyn concert, the one in New York, yesterday, that they didn't even acknowledge Chester at all. So what was the point of talking about erasing the past using my words against me during the LA concert if you weren't going to go continue to have that conversation? There are a lot of things that are very strange about this entire situation. So, you know, on top of the weirdness of the letter, the weirdness of Brad stepping down in the way he stepped down, the weirdness of Mike acting as gatekeeper, the weirdness of the lack of response on everything that's been going on, the lack of a personal letter from Rob Borden, the, you know, all of it. It seems like a very serious situation. And so to hear that Emily was in the band was shocking. Not at first. Again, I'm not mad that Linkin Park is moving on. To each their own, right? Okay, if the three people in the band who co-founded the band, and two of which are owners and presidents or founders and presidents of Machine Shop Records, want to continue to evolve their art through the platform that they've developed for themselves, in my mind, they have every right to do that. But it matters what you do when it happens. It matters what comes up and how you respond to it. A lot has come up and they have not responded to it, which brings me to Emily. Shocked was I to learn about her history because, one, the band's never been particularly religious. They've made themselves a band that is as neutral as possible so they can reach as many people, types of people as possible. That's part of their marketing scheme. That's why they vanillaized Chester when 2007 came around with Minutes to Midnight and made him a family man instead of a guy who likes to fucking party. They're like, we're a drug-free brand. Freudian slip. We are a drug-free band. But like Mike drinks. So does everybody else in the band, pretty much, except for Rob and maybe Brad. You know, Chester uses substance. He's been smoking weed his entire life. Way to demonize anybody for it. And it's just like, it's bizarre because it's not the first time in the band's history they've done an aggressive facelift. It's not even the second or third time. And I think that with Emily in the picture, certain questions, just on like a research level, certain questions I had were immediately tested. It was like, okay, well then what are these photos of Chester and the band in Portugal with the ex-president of the Republic and Bill Clinton? Oh, they were from 2014. Well, let's go ahead and put that in there. So according to the history of the band, there are 2 albums in what I would call the Clinton era Linkin Park. Because it seems like in 2014, the band met with the Clinton administration in public. And then shortly after that, SRS Recycling was given money by the Clinton Foundation. Chester died while promoting Hillary Clinton. The time that I was talking about first, about this, the Clinton Foundation being involved in Haiti and that Portugal incident, that was The Hunting Party, an album that was not included on the greatest hits, was only brought up during the show because I said something about it in the LA show. The other part was that Chester died promoting Hillary Clinton, and his sister's claiming he saw what was on the hidden server and that he had been going to dinners with them so often over the 3 years following that initial incident that he was sick of it. And that album was One More Light, on which he was very clearly expressing dual perspectives. He was doing Cross Off with Mark Morton, and he was doing One More Light while claiming that he didn't want to do anything like Cross Off ever again because he's an old man and he just wants to talk about his fucking feelings.
In a lot of the comments that I've been seeing on my channel from Linkin Park fans, they have mentioned some alternative theories for your father's death. What are your thoughts on any of those?
I think everything's on the table until it's not. They did not investigate. Chester was very clearly entrenched in the Clinton Foundation and therefore associated to Scientology on some tangential level for at least 3 years before he died. A time at which he joined the alleged human trafficking task force postulated by and seemingly verified by the, at the time, District of Attorney Tony Rackauckus.
Well, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so after Chester died, the District Attorney of Orange County, Tony Rackauckus, sent my family a letter recognizing Chester's efforts to pioneer a human trafficking task force in Newport Beach. This was followed by correspondence, which seemed to verify that interaction. On a post, I believe that, Tony Rackauckus posted the correspondence as a 1-year memory of Chester's death, and right away after Chester died. So he did it twice. He also made a coded reference to their song Invisible.
What was your dad's involvement in that text?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. He said he was going to get the guys involved. At that time, he was either talking about Stone Temple Pilots or Linkin Park. Linkin Park at that time had just been working without Chester on The Hunting Party. And then Chester came back from STP after recording High Rise and joined the band and went, oh shit, you guys are doing punk? I want to do punk. And then they did punk. And that album outed them as being fake phonies who are imitations of rebellion, who are used as a mouthpiece for the industry and their money laundering scheme. The entire album is about that. We are imitations of rebellion, which is what I said in my videos I posted on my story today. My videos of the concert. If you hear that, I said, you're an imitation. You said so. Fuck you. What are you talking about? And so nobody really knows because all of it's hidden in secrecy. But I'll tell you what, long after Chester's death, 7 years until now, there have been political investments and ties to this entire situation. Barbara Van Dalen of Given Hour is now the head of the Prevents Task Force, signed into office by Donald Trump. And there's more. So it's like, and some of that, like I said, I can't really express, but at this moment, but there are huge political undertones, huge social engineering undertones to this entire thing. And I just feel like what you said about, well, these people are victims, the people in the fan base, like, how could you not acknowledge the people you're asking to buy your tickets after Emily came into the fold? Nonetheless, why has band management never said anything about why they changed Chester's rideshare by 4 hours the day he died? He was supposed to leave at 4:30 a.m. The rideshare showed up at 9 a.m. Why was there only 2 hours of investigation? Why did they only look at one room of the house? Why did they decide immediately it wasn't foul play and decide not to get the LA for homicide investigation? Why are they saying that he hanged himself with a corporate sponsor's belt from a closet he was taller than when he was sober? And I think that these questions, including, the contextualizing of those Clinton photos and the eras in which these albums were made and how they're not on the greatest hits and how they weren't included in the show and X, Y, and Z, I think it's important to bring all of that to the forefront as someone researching the topic, because when you really look at it, it seems like they've scattered all the pieces. So it's hard to pull it together, because you don't want to be that conspiracy theorist that goes, well, if they said this, nature of their existence, these bits of information are of alignment. They are not. You see that right there?
I think your audio might be going in and out a little bit. Can you hear it?
I can't hear. That's crazy.
No, it sounds good right now. It sounds good right
now. Good now? But yes, conversation for me is taking all that information that I know and place it. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, it will randomly go out for like a second and then come back in. I don't know why.
I'll go.
It's been happening a little regularly during the interview. Not terribly frequently, but somewhat regularly. Not today, Hillary Clinton.
I'll move slower. Not today, you punk ass bitches. We stand here calmly. But part of the answer to the Emily question is, I think that there's a huge responsibility on the band to acknowledge where they come from, especially as a band that predicates their entire existence on the way that people love them and the way that they are able to influence and interact with the victims of the traumas they are singing about. I think that so that's one side. The other side of the Emily situation is that the picture in terms of a timeline, because there are too many interesting coincidences, intersections of meaning in this situation that are being ignored because they're supposed to be unrelated, because they told you they were unrelated, not because they are unrelated. As for Emily, totally shocked and surprised. I was shocked and surprised by her immediate unfriending of Danny Masterson, which appeared to come only after I pointed out she was friends with Danny Masterson, showed a search of her follower base. I went over to her profile, searched Danny Masterson, found she was still friends with him even after she said she wasn't involved. And then the next day she gave her apology and she unfriended him. And so the band's responding in real time to the things that I'm saying. They're just doing it quietly so that it looks like they're just naturally doing it. And with Emily, I want to acknowledge so badly that as a child in any cult environment, whether it's the celebrity cult of Scientology or the celebrity cult of Linkin Park or the celebrity cult of evangelical Christianity, it doesn't matter. You're still a victim. The same way that Serge is a victim, you are a victim, I am a victim. Victimhood transcends the actual, in my mind, the actual exclusivity of the trauma. Because we can all understand what it's like to be victimized. We can all understand what it was like to be in that situation. Now, when you're in it, it's hard to see. So I want to start the criticism or analysis that I have of Emily with that, because it is true. You are a victim of your parents' designs. I am too. And that's what it is. So first off, I'm sorry that you've experienced this life the way that you've had to experience it. It's not a choice. We all know what happens if you say no. But with that being said, you have a opportunity, Emily, right now to do something no one's ever done before, to genuinely use the music as a means for healing and change. You could be the change you want to see in the world. And you have to know how hard it's going to be. I'm a living example of how hard that is going to be for you. But I'm also a living example of community that you could have. You could use my father's words as a way to heal yourself. You can use this new music as a way to not bring in influence to the church in terms of followership, in terms of finance. You can use this as a way to say, no, I don't appreciate what you've done. I know what you've done, and I won't stand for it. You could do this, could be a vehicle for that. On the other hand, what you've chosen to do so far is ignore the people you are now assimilating as your fan base, all victims, just like you. You're abusing their nostalgia and their emotional ties to this music, which, by the way, has saved lives. You are just following in the footsteps that were made for you by people who don't care about your well-being. If they cared about your well-being, in my opinion, nobody would have let you walk out on stage in that condition the first time you did it. I 100% believe that. I know what my mom would do. I know what my brothers and sisters would do. I know what my father would do. And if I am able to say, no, that's not love, what you've shown me over the last couple of years, family, is not family, and I don't stand for it, then you can do it too. And this isn't somebody, your mother's not somebody who's just writing articles for a organization. She controls the discourse. I understand how hard it can be someone on the, like, think about this. Emily is a victim of the cult, but she's also a victim of anything that anyone decides to say about her. It can spin out so fast. They don't write about what they don't want to write about. So if somebody goes out and writes something about Emily, you're going to know that she had a falling out. And here's the thing too, with the band, you can't tell me that Linkin Park doesn't know. My theory is that there are at least 2 members in the band who are Scientologists, maybe for a long time, maybe just recently. I think someone found God. And I'll tell you why, because the church does not allow anyone to affiliate with it if they do not accept the church. You can't be a band of Scientology without Scientology behind your back. And that to me is
true.
a really serious thing.
I mean, Emily came from Dead Sarah, where all the members of the bands are Scientologists, were a Scientologist. And
there you go.
Who are the 2 members of Linkin Park that you suspect might be Scientologists?
You know, honestly, I would say that I'd exclude Brad, but I wouldn't count him out just on the basis that he's Jewish. I would say that there's, I've always known him to be a pious, religious person. And so I feel like just respecting what I know of him, I would say that he's not Scientologist, but I can't confirm or deny that. He's always been very supportive of his faith and his community, as far as I'm aware. I have this muffin in my hand. I've been trying to eat it forever, but I may never get there.
Go for it.
But the other people I've seen are Dave. I think Dave might be the guy. He's the one who let slip in the Zane Lowe interview that they'd known Emily for years. And that's when they started having to talk about when they met. Which, by the way, Emily did not answer a single question during the Zane Lowe interview, and since has not answered a single question postulated by anybody for any reason. I would say that Mike Shinoda has given me extreme Scientology vibes, especially with the way that he's handling everything. I mean, you can't talk to people who aren't in the church. He's not talking to me. He's over here using grooming and assault tactics that are extremely subtle, but you can see with a trained eye against me. He's done it on the show. He's done it on the stage. You know, you got people throwing mustard packets at him. Why do you think people are throwing mustard packets at you during your New York concert, Mike? It's because you, Brad, Joe, and Dave disarmed the entire conversation during the Zane Lowe interview that was meant to clear the air about all of this. You all pass it off as being silly and stupid.
Well, even if they aren't Scientologists, they certainly have been safe pointed by Scientology, which is a Scientology word for basically taking someone who's not a Scientologist, but in some position of power, and making an ally out of them so that they will not hear ill of you and will support you to others. And the fact that Linkin Park will not tolerate criticism of Scientology on its social media platforms is astonishing.
From the mouth of the horse himself, Mike Shinoda, he says, "Oh, in his Discord with all the fans, of course, it's this exclusive community that he thinks he can pull this off, right? He doesn't go to the public and say this shit to press. He says it to his dedicated fan base in his Discord, which has been following him for years. What does he say? Well, if we can all respectfully disagree, then that's worth it. But if you disagree, it's disrespectful. And that's just a contradictory thing in its own right. And he's like, if you don't respect me the way that I want to be respected, I'll disrespect you." He said those things. Like, that's not me mincing words. That's the Discord screenshot. And for him to say something like that, and then to like be on stage and during the show and be like, "Hey, what was that one album that we never played on the greatest? Wait, Paper Cuts was a what?" And it's like, it's a greatest hits album. Stop fucking lying to your fans and acting like they're stupid. You're fishing for compliments. You want people to answer it for you so you don't seem like you're in control of it, but you are. You didn't play Hunting Party. You know that I said something about it. And then during that show, you went and changed your words from replacing to erasing after I said you were erasing my father. You knew I was in the crowd. Security knew where I was. I told you all where I was going to be. And I gave you 48-hour notice. It's not like they didn't know. The band has been tagged in everything. They're just safe point, I guess. And so either they're Scientologists, which I can see Scientology using this platform for a lot of things, or they're allies of Scientology, which still requires some form of contractual agreement. It says, I will do X, Y, and Z for you if you do X, Y, and Z for me. It's called quid pro quo.
I mean, the segment of Linkin Park fans who do not understand why it would be important that their new lead singer's mom works for the leader of the Scientology cult is crazy to me. She's the scriptwriter for David. She's the scriptwriter for David Miscavige, and she used to be the PR aide. The PR aide for the Office of Special Affairs International. She wasn't just an editor of a magazine. She was the PR aide. It's a high. No. I mean, you're not the one. You're not the. You're just probably repeating something that you heard someone say about her being the editor of the magazine. She was.
Yeah. No, it's good that this is clarified. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
She was also at another time the PR aide. I mean, when you work at the Office of Special Affairs International, sometimes these posts can just be interchangeable. But even the Freedom magazine, that's not just a Scientology magazine. That's a magazine that Scientology creates for propaganda for external purposes. That's not the local internal feel-good magazine. Scientology News, International Scientology News, is the internal magazine. The Freedom magazine is the external propaganda magazine that they use to attack critics of Scientology and politicians and journalists and all this.
It's the malware.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
I see that Mr. Robot.
When people just say, "Oh, we don't know if Emily's still a Scientologist," yes, she is, because if she wasn't, do you know what people who aren't Scientologists can do? They can say, "I'm not a Scientologist." Uh-oh, you just muted yourself again.
Am I back? Damn,
yeah, you're back.
Really StreamYard's like, bro, seriously, stop. You're going to get us all canceled. But
although
it
sounds like
I
now
totally
your
agree with
microphone, it sounds like now it might be using the computer mic instead of your plug-in mic.
Son of a bitch. This is so weird. Is it back? Did that work?
Oh, that's back. Good. That's good. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just plug it
Yeah.
back in, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate you clarifying on those two positions, because I've been doing my research, and most people see, and that's the thing, is like, you only know what you can based on the reporting that is available. And if the reporters that are saying things aren't saying them right, or have a different ulterior motive, or they're just not paying attention, or whatever it is, then those kinds of things can be confused. I didn't realize that they were two separate moments in time. That is a very good thing to talk about. So I appreciate the clarification on that. And you're totally right about again, people in power abusing their power for the sake of maintaining power and cultivating it for their own ends. That is what we're talking about when it comes to Emily. I think that Emily is a talented vocalist. I have said that from the beginning. I don't hate Linkin Park. I hate the way they've chosen to be human. I don't agree with having someone who will not stand up against the faith, stand up against the big brother of the situation, and say, no, I'm not with you. I don't appreciate that person standing in the place of my father, who spent his entire life doing that. And, I think, like, sure, this album at any rate could be about, a symbolic gesture, expression, so to speak, of what the experience has been like being around these political entities like the Clintons, around these religious entities, these cults like Scientology. Maybe that's true, but for them to like repeatedly ignore everybody and just move on with the reunion tour is kind of insane. And I mean that in like a clinical way. Like, like, categorically everything that could possibly be wrong, everything that you would box for, like, oh, check. Yep. That's an abusive thing. That's an abusive thing. It's all there. And so, I started talking about Mike's grooming techniques way back in June and this year. And people were like, I can't believe you'd say that about Mike. And I'm like, just watch. And then what do you know? Linkin Park comes out and they do the same thing that I said they were going to do. And there are still diehards about it. So when it comes to Emily, I think that she's in a position that's extremely unique for someone in her position. She is a Nepo baby who has been raised in a cult of violence and deception, who now has the opportunity to not only be transformed by the work that she seems to be pouring her heart and soul into, while also acknowledging her context and making the changes around her to be the change in the world she wishes to see, if that's something she wants. But if she doesn't, in my humble opinion, she should step down. And if she doesn't do that, then in my humble opinion, then, and by the way, somebody who hasn't said a single thing and is probably lucky for this, but is ultimately going to eat a lot of it in a not a good way, because that's just the way it works, is Colin Brittain. I think that the drummer who replaced Rob Borden, who has nothing to say about his replacement and nothing about the situation, is also a little too fucking quiet. I know I put a lot of heat on Emily and Mike and Brad, but I'm putting heat on Colin as well, because these people are, by the way, also as a legacy, Emily, as a legacy of the cult and a legacy of the industry influence of the band that you're now in, you kind of don't have a choice. You don't get to come into an industry job like this and say, I was raised on this. This helped me through my hardest times. And then have people like Serge come out who are saying that in their darkest times in Scientology, they listened to Linkin Park to heal, to stay sane. You can't. These people are saying they know you. These people are saying that they've been in these situations. These people are asking you to do better. You kind of bitten the bullet, in my opinion, because what you did is you either stupidly, in the same way that you accidentally went to the Danny Masterson trial, or intentionally, the same way that you went to the Danny Masterson trial, stepped into the limelight, not realizing that there was this figurative gun aimed at you. And if you, and it would only, the trigger would only be pulled in response to your actions. Everything that you're receiving right now is not the problem with the fans. It's the problem with the environment and the industry that you chose to be a part of. And yeah, it's kind of weird to me that she would say things like during the first show, like, oh, the LPU showcase, oh, Mike taught me to sing 8 months ago. Like you guys are sloppy about your press. You're sloppy about your stories and your timelines. You're sloppy about your social interactions. You are sloppy. You are messy, messy, messy. And I'm hopeful that all of this will end up being a positive thing. But right now, it's an extremely negative thing that needs to be taken seriously. There are a lot of people out there losing their minds because you took the person that kept them safe and brutalized them on stage 7 years after their death with zero accountability. I mean, you should be having an in memoriam for Chester every show, talking about what happened to him, talking about the meaning he had to you all, talking about the effect that he had on these generations that you did not, Emily. This is the classic sign of Nepo power. This would be like Jaden and Willow Smith standing up and being like, hey, I'm just going to ride the coattails of my dad and my mom. And that's it. And if any of you have a problem with it, you guys can shut the fuck up because I'm in a cult. That doesn't make any sense. That's crazy. I mean, I would never do that. That's why I'm not ever talked to about anything, is because I don't agree with these situations and these decisions. I would have never allowed certain things to have happened if people truly did want me to make decisions on Chester's legacy, which I have never been in the position to do so. And so as a whole, I think there's the research perspective. I think there's the victim perspective. I think that as a victim's right advocate, I should say something about that and acknowledge Emily for what she is. And then on the other side, I also have to acknowledge that Emily is in a particularly special place, and she has every opportunity to turn it into something good, but she's choosing not to for now. And that this reunion tour to me is a big joke, and that they should have never allowed it to happen. It feels extremely disrespectful, extremely narrow-minded. And, you don't know the hundreds of people you've affected, people who won't even talk to me, but I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of people talking to me about how much you hurt them. I have people going just saying this was a waste of my time.
Yeah.
You were having
powerful words. Powerful words. We got a bunch of comments starred in the live chat. You want to take a moment? We'll go through some of them.
Do it.
All right. We got Professional YouTube Watcher as a new channel member. Thank you very much. Okay, some of these others were started a long time ago, and we've covered some of this ground. So let's see. Dave Owen says, how Emily can sing Crawling is beyond me. Mother Universe says,
I had somebody say to me,
oh, go ahead.
God, I have so many thoughts about that. Imagine if the band members apologized.
Yeah, imagine if the band members apologized and actually took responsibility. I mean, they could become absolute heroes if they addressed this Scientology thing correctly.
Heroes, and they came out underdogs. Why you got to make yourself an underdog? It's crazy.
Yeah. Mary James says, those who are huge fans of Linkin Park like me that also know the abuses of Scientology can't stand the current relationship with Emily. Huge insult to Chester.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary James.
And this is an interesting comment. Lewis Barrett, it is dangerous giving a false impression to queer women that Scientology is safe for them. Yeah. It's true.
That's the truth.
By not distancing herself from Scientology, by not standing up for some of these things, she allows Scientology to benefit from her platform by people going, oh, wow, if she's a Scientologist, then Scientology must not be that bad.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We have Jenna Miscavige in the chat. Hi, guys. Excited to see this. Hi.
Hello.
Les Longleaf says, yeah, crickets from the band. I think Scientology got them.
That's a good sign.
Mother Universe says they're clearly concerned with comments since they literally addressed what Jamie said while on stage.
Yeah, they did.
Zelda Menifee says, I stumbled across this channel after I left the church, and this is one of the best communities I've ever found. Awesome.
Welcome. That for you guys.
Awaken Nowadays says, thank you, Mr. Bennington, for joining AA Ron.
It's been
Oh, okay. This is interesting here. Free translate. Do Scientologists look down on suicide, or do you just leave your body anyway and move on to a new one, and it doesn't matter? Well, this is interesting. Scientologists, when they talk about dropping the body, particularly when they're not sick or it's, like in causatively dropping the body, what that actually means to a Scientologist is basically making yourself die in your sleep, but not using any drugs or anything. They think that they have the spiritual power to just permanently and causatively leave their body, and the body will just die while sleeping. So it's not like you're walking down the street and you just like keel over.
Yeah.
But so
that's very interesting.
But in Scientology, if you actually do have a suicide attempt in your history, that is considered a psychotic break, and it is very much looked down on. And it can disqualify you for things. So like anyone who has a history of attempting to take their own life is not allowed to come to the Flag
You
Land
said
base in Clearwater.
disqualify.
Yeah. They say you're not qualified. You're unqualified.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to come to Clearwater, Florida. Your microphone, I can hear you, but I think your mic got unplugged.
No.
Hillary Clinton's at it again, folks. Keep a good man down, though.
Is that better?
I can hear you, but I don't think your mic is plugged in. Boom. There it is. I heard it.
Okay. I'm going to stop moving. Please.
Okay. Gen X Bayach says, I want to know how Emily got on the band's radar. Is it fair to say that just through her work with Dead Sarah, that she was on the radar of a lot of people in the music industry?
Well, I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. I'm curious to know that as well, because when I was at the concert, I was vibing with Grandson. Like they had a really good energy. That was the first band. That was the band to open for the Linkin Park show in LA. And then they were going hard, and I was like, damn, I like these guys. Like their energy is hardcore. And then I didn't know anything about them. And then he stopped and he was like, my name's Grandson. Are you guys ready to see History in the Making? It's coming. Like Linkin Park's about to be on the stage. Like get fucking amped for it. They were just like hype boys for Linkin Park, which I understand. You're opening for the band. That's classic, performance 101. You hype up the guy you're there to represent. So you hype the guy up. Okay, perfect. I understand. But what they said really bothered me because and it kind of made it hard for me to vibe with their energy after that, because I was kind of like, damn, this guy thinks that way. Fuck. and then it was like, he's like, you guys might remember me from being featured on Post Traumatic. Mike Shinoda is my mentor. This project started in LA and we were playing for shows of, only a dozen people forever, but here we are. We're rocking it out in an arena. You guys are fucking amazing. And he just kept like, after that, he just kept going like, you need to like Mike Shinoda. You need to like Mike Shinoda. Are you ready to see this shit? This shit's going to blow your fucking mind. And it was like the most average Linkin Park show of all time. And also like one of the most insulting. I mean, again, he knew I was in the crowd. He knew where I was. Security. Linkin Park knows about security. I grew up in the band. I fucking know what they do and do not know, what their communication is with the actual security of the venue. I know. I used to not be able to walk around outside without a bodyguard during those shows because of some of the haters out there. So, I know as a child in this situation. But with that being said, it's weird. Like, it kind of bothered me that guy was mentored by Mike around the same time that I was trying to get mentored by Mike, around the same time I was being mentored by his wife. Like I could have been a part of all of this, but you have to ask yourself, why was Jamie not involved? Why was Jamie not asked to be a part of this? Who helped pay for Jamie's film A Chant, the Stephen King adaptation, and who didn't? Who was a part of the crowdfunding and the promotion, and who wasn't? Who was supportive? Who was in the circle claiming they were when they weren't? Who wasn't in the circle but is now claiming that they want to be given a certain amount of respect or else? There are real questions to be asked about that. And, the industry is weird because everybody knows everybody. They all know each other. And at the same time, they don't. Like, they're not going to tell you how that happened. Yeah, that's a good question. Who introduced Emily to Mike? And how long did they know each other? Because the real question, it seems to me, is not how did they make it on the radar? It's who brought them and what year. Because even Mike Shinoda is unclear about what year. He slipped and said 2017. He's talking 2019. We really actually do need to know where you met Emily, how you met her, and whether or not you met her in 2017, given that there was an extreme, chaotic event called the death of Chester Bennington that happened in 2017. So in that way, you know, it's easier and easier for me to see that Scientology has been involved on some level for years and years and years at this point, even before Chester died. So going on over a decade, because you have to be green lit by these people. You don't just get to be around Scientology. You don't just get to have privileged interactions with people who are in high positions. It's just not what it is. So in the same way that it's impossible for Emily to escape the actual circumstance of her existence, the context of her being, you also have to, they don't get to escape either. You cannot escape. And that's the thing, is like, the radar isn't the problem because everybody's on everybody's radar. The industry runs on something called A&R, where people go out and they hunt down artists. They decide what's going to be profitable. They decide what's going to be on the chart, what's going to be a viable asset for not only the year that they are releasing music, but for years to come, because it's all about buying and selling product. It's all about realty. Okay. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. Like, when you invest in a singer, when you invest in a drummer, when you invest in a band, however much money you think they're making off the show, it costs as much or more to do the merch, to do the marketing, to do the interviews and all that. Like, whatever you think was put into the show, imagine that much or more was put into the actual presence of Linkin Park online. And that includes shutting up media about certain things, or creating pockets in media where certain narratives are interacted with, or expanded upon, or reduced and belittled, isolated, so to speak. And so that's a great question. Where is Emily from? How did that meeting happen? And I think that is something that needs to be answered. I also think that the radar is less of the question, because the radar is the industry. The industry is well aware of everything. They know about me. They know about everything else. And they know about, like, Diddy just got pulled up. He just got found out. They found him. They brought him in for evading the law. After
they
that
got him,
loss.
ladies and gentlemen. They got
him. But
can
you hear me all right?
Hold on. Now I can.
So,
I didn't really hear anything you said after I said they got him.
what I was going to say is that the last thing I'll say about this radar problem is that Leonard Blavatnik, who was once a board member of Warner Music Group, or Warner Brothers Records, he bought the company for a couple $2 billion. He became the owner, and he established the Leonard Blavatnik Center for Education. And it was done with a university. In 2022, that learning center held a specific program where they bring in producers of big, AAA title names and companies into this program, and they use them as a means to what you might call program the newest wave of industry cultural entities. So they're basically shaping the culture of the music industry and creating the next wave of people who are going to take the mantle. And this is done by the guy who runs Warner Music Group. Okay. The first person that they had, which nobody's talking about right now, was the president of Sean Combs Industries. He was the first producer in residency. And he is the president of Diddy's business. I think that tells you all you need to know about radar and who knows who and who's invested in what. The same way that Scientology has their grimy little fingers in everything, so does the music industry. They know about everything. They have this shit planned out for years. They treat people like realty assets, period. Emily was a bought and paid for horse in a race that they're betting on. That's my opinion.
There you go. Matthias Santos says, from 0 to 10, how likely do you two think that Emily Armstrong How likely do you two think Emily Armstrong can openly go against the Church of Scientology during 2024? She wouldn't even have to go against it. She would just have to say, I mean, I guess I guess the statements that I have in mind could be characterized as going against it, but saying I'm no longer a part of it, and anyone who ever abused any children should be held accountable and brought to justice, and the people who covered up child SA at these ranches should be prosecuted and sent to prison. And those are just fair statements that anybody should be able to agree with. It's not that those aren't even anti-Scientology statements, you know? Yeah. So
I think that it's unlikely she can kind of go against it. I do feel like I sense a trap. You know, somebody can apologize for something that they did, but they also have to give a meaningful apology, like Emily's apology to herself, I guess, not really anybody else, for her involvement with Danny Masterson. She's not acknowledging the actual severity of the situation, the implications of her actually being there and being called in as a confidant to intimidate these people, to be there in support of Danny. I think that it's weird that she only just unfriended him. And I think that, you know, in the same way that I go out and I speak about things and I'm told, well, you're against them, all you're trying to do is hate. The answer is that that's not really true, but you're going to be told that. So in the reality that she could go against the church, I don't know about that. I don't think she'll be allowed to. But what I will say is that it is important to create a space for yourself where you can have and express those emotions and feelings that you do have, your perspective on the situation. And so at the very minimum, she should be able to be allowed to say, hey, I'm sorry for this reason, but I feel like it does kind of have to come from a place of like acknowledging the victims that she's actually affected. She did not talk about the victims. She didn't bring up Chrissy. She didn't bring up any of the Jane Does. She didn't bring up her actual intimidation. She didn't, which was reported. She didn't bring up things. She said, I don't advocate or condone this behavior, but she didn't say what behavior that she was participating in that led to that need to not condone that publicly. So it's not that it's a hate thing. It's that it's genuinely hard to say anything against anything because you will be attacked for anything that you're against, whether it be Linkin Park, whether it be your family, whether it be the brainwashing you endured or the trauma you endured, whether it be politics, it doesn't matter. You're always going to face resistance. And so I think it's more important to say, well, it's not just a one and done, I'm done with Scientology and anything I say is an attack against the church. It's like, this is an active human conversation where even our most personal and emotional thoughts and feelings on the matter change based on the context, based on the interaction. You're a person that's constantly evolving. So it would be better if she came out and constantly apologized, meaning consistently. It'd be better if she came out and created a consistency of voice so that there couldn't be any confusion about who she's talking about and why and how it's affecting her and the situation. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of people might argue, well, you're a public figure. You don't have a right to privacy. I understand that. But also, like, these are human beings. And so they kind of go hand in hand. You do have an entitlement or a responsibility to certain acknowledgments and certain actions. You must hold yourself a certain way as someone in a position of responsibility, as I've been saying. But does that mean the art has to suffer? Does that mean Linkin Park can't continue? Does that mean what they're doing is bad? No, it just means that the way they've chosen to handle it is not great. So if she came out, to me, in my mind, if she came out and she did like a more consistent social media interaction or press interaction and did interviews and like really showed herself, I think that the likelihood of her coming out against the church, but really just coming out as like a neutral and individual in the situation, you know, you can have both in a certain way, and it doesn't have to be fuck you. It could be one or the other, you know. I think she could do that, but also I don't know Emily, and I don't know if she has the consistency or integrity for that, or even the desire. She could honestly not give a fuck about any of this, and I could just be blowing into the wind, trying to like screaming into the void, like advocating for someone who will never care. So,
yeah. Yep. All right. Helena, flock of swan boats says, sending you love and light, Jamie.
Whoa. Thank you. Swan boats, huh?
Lewis Barrett, how does Jamie feel about what Cedric said about Emily, since Cedric was a Scientologist and knew his father, Chester?
Actually, Thank you for asking that. I'm glad that you brought up Cedric because we had a very interesting conversation, and all I have to say about Cedric right now are, good things. And um, I would argue he was there for me in a way that Linkin Park wasn't. I when I got so I found out that he said something about Linkin Park being a Disney level brand and X, Y, and Z, and I was like, okay, that's an interesting thing. And then somebody threatened me, claiming they were on behalf of Scientology, Emily, Mike, and friends, and that they were going to hunt me down and beat the shit out of me at the show, or around the show, just because I had the gall to step up and say something and go anyways. And so, I was thinking like, well, damn, how do people handle this? Like, I know how I would handle it, but Scientology is definitely its own field of influence. So let me see if I could hit Cedric up. And that's kind of how I ended up getting into contact with Serge, because what happened was I reached out to Chrissy and thanked her for her acknowledgement of my family and apologized for Emily and told her I was there for her and as a victim's right advocate, like, and as a human, like I see her and I see how this is going. And I apologize for the way that she's been interacted with as a Jane Doe, just as a whole, but also in this situation. And I ended up talking to Cedric. I was like, hey, dude, like, this is just Jamie Bennington. I'm not freaking out. I'm not trying to spam you. I'm just saying, I know all of you were harassed. I don't want to ask your wife because she was a victim, but I do want to ask you because you have history with this. Like, how do you handle a Scientology threat? And so he actually put me in touch with Serge, which is somebody I ended up meeting at the show, ended up doing the live stream with after the show. It was really beautiful. And then we ended up having another conversation about doing art in the future and helping victims, achieve visibility as a whole for Scientology and for, just the broad spectrum of victim. And so with Cedric and what he said about Emily, I was like, I just kind of felt like I had a kindred spirit, but now I'm also like a little about it. Like, I don't know how to feel exactly, because when I was talking to Cedric, and I haven't talked to him since, he hasn't like followed up in a certain way. Chrissy hasn't either. They've both acknowledged me publicly and supported me, but it's outside of that interaction. It's not really been like a, we're friends now kind of thing. It's been like a, I see you kind of thing. And that's fine. I'm not saying anything against that. What I'm saying is that with Cedric, it was weird because today I found out that Mars Volta and Deftones are going on tour together. And I wish he would have said something, because Steph, the guitarist for Deftones, is the godfather of my brother Draven and also an extremely close friend with Samantha Bennington. So not only does Samantha get to shirk responsibility for everything she put me through in the last year and my entire life with her, but also they don't have to say anything meaningful. They don't have to take what I'm doing seriously. And Steph's just going to go out on tour now. And he's a part of that entire picture. He's one of Chester's biggest friends, closest friends for the longest time. He used to live with Chester in his house when, him and Sam were together. And it's just like, to me, that feels weird. It feels weird that Cedric said what he said and that Steph is who he is, and that those two bands are now going on tour together. And they're launching it like the day of or the day after the second world tour from Zero World Tour show. It's just very strange. And I'm not saying it's one way or the other. I'm just speculating like anybody else, but it just.
So Steph is the godfather of your younger brother.
That's how I understand it. He's one of Samantha's longest term friends. He was there when Linkin Park was named, like he's that kind of deep cut. So
I see.
It's
So Steph and Samantha are still close, or have been close for a long time.
Allegedly. Samantha will die on the hill that they're best friends and that's all it is and whatever, but they're brothers and sisters and whatever. But Samantha's version of family is extremely relative and contextual. So it could be one day she's best friends and totally out there, and 5 minutes later she's off about how unusual and exotic and royal she is. Hard to
It's
be
so
involved.
messy. It's all
very messy.
Relationships are overlapping. It's wild. Justin Proper says, "We love you, Jamie."
Thank you, Justin, for the acknowledgement.
Marie C says, your dad and his songs have saved so many lives and given so many people comfort over the years. I know that I wouldn't be here without him. That's very nice.
I agree. I wouldn't either, I don't think. I think he, in a weird way, even though he kind of like cursed me with this massive demon called Linkin Park and the industry that it represents, Chester kind of saved me. I honestly, I don't think I would be here right now like this, to be honest, the people I was around. So yeah, thank you, Chester.
Swing ND says, does Jamie make music?
I do. I actually spent all night last night sequencing my second album of the year. I drop everything really quietly because I don't care about the fame or the money. I'm not signed. I do everything in-house. It's usually done on the phone or on Cakewalk or something. You know, I'm just kind of like messing around. But yeah.
Where can people go to hear your music?
Right now I'm going through I call it material processing. I take everything, my voice memos and my jam sessions, and I put them onto SoundCloud, and then I use those as material for greater projects, like when I sequenced my album last night. But I put out a reimagining of my EP. I wanted it then to be a full album, but I have been in a few over the last couple of years. And so I kind of just threw it together. I wasn't able to afford the rights to keep it up. So I ended up taking it down after like 2 years of scraping by. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to use what I have now to create a new album and kind of bring my energy to the table, like where I am now, not where I was. And so From the Outside Looking In is the first album I dropped this year on SoundCloud. I presented it on my Instagram a couple of times, so those of you going through my highlights might see some of it. But you know, I came back from the show and I was just like, I was already in the middle of sequencing, and then I was like, you know, I need to finish this for myself. Like I have so many cool little bits and pieces here and there, and I've been working on an album called 143 for the last 6 months, and that is the album I'm talking about. And so, yeah, I do everything from, you know, just jam sessions to seed ideas. I'm bare. I'm transparent about everything. I don't care how noisy or reckless or gross it is. Like if it's not perfect, like you can hear me voice cracking, you can hear me messing up the lines, you can hear me working it out in real time. And that's just the way that I do things. So you can find me on my SoundCloud. You can find a lot of my live streams or all of my live streams on YouTube. I do like actual like flow meditations and workflows.
Where are they on YouTube?
The Picture Pieces archive. Everything that I do is under that now.
Oh,
it was This Is the Void for a while, but now it's the Picture Pieces archive because that was just a transitional period.
Well, here, I'll pull it up here just so that people can see.
Thanks.
But
yeah, I do music all the time. My live audience knows that. I'm pretty chill. I just hang out with people for hours and hours and hours and hours. Hey, there it is. And look, there's Trilogy. So beautiful.
The Picture Pieces archive. You can find them on YouTube there. And also, here's your Instagram.
That's right.
I'll zoom in. The Picture Pieces archive.
That's a picture of me and Chester back during our visitation days.
Very cool. All right, just a handful more and we'll wrap this up. Mother Universe says it's weird. We could hear the other side of the story if the band addressed anything, but they won't. It just seems like they're the ones with stuff to hide, not Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay, Avina Sativa says, Jamie, have you listened to Sloan Bella's 3-part video about your father and his legacy in investigating trafficking, probably Scientology, and he is helping those children on the other side? Are you familiar with this?
We just talked about this in June and July because it was something that I needed time to talk about. It was just something I was very frustrated with. So the first 3 videos, I watched them. There are 4 of them. The first 3 were about Chris Cornell, who I had the pleasure of knowing for a brief amount of time, and Chester coming through. And a lot of it was like hyper resonant with my reality at the moment that I watched the video. I was like, I know what this means. I hear what they're saying. I see between the lines, which is, you know, at the time I was performing all of my research, which is I spent a period of time, about 3 years in research mode before I even came out public. And so everything I'm doing here is extremely calculated, extremely informed and educated. And so I'll just say that. But I found those videos and I was like, because I've always I'm very intuitive myself. I have my, mystical practice, my metaphysical practice, which I call my color meditation. I believe in forces beyond our sight, which manifest occasionally, depending on how we like to stimulate them or finesse them. And I have many really cool interactions with this that I can share later, not here right now, because there are some things that are better spoken of in their entirety all at once. And here is not the place to do that because it is a long story. But I reached out to Sloan Bella after seeing the first 3 videos. And I said, hey, I'm JAIME Bennington. I'd like to talk to you. You talked about my dad. And we had a nice back and forth. And we ended up talking. And we ended up actually exchanging information, scheduling a time to talk. She told me that her son had just died the previous year. She's still grieving, so it takes time to get back to emails and things like that. Which, by the way, if you know anything about it, he died in a car, like a hit and run, I believe, which was, just any car accident is really tough, but that's just a horrific thing, especially considering the powers involved. And so when you watch that video, the 4th one, ministering XO, Chester's ministering the energy XO, she's talking about me. She's talking about our interaction. What ended up happening was that she ghosted me. I even reached out to her 2 or 3 months after and said, let's put the business aside. We don't need to have the interview about what you've been talking about. I am genuinely curious about you and if you're okay, because you said you were grieving. So all of that aside, I'm here for you. We don't have to talk about Linkin Park. We don't have to talk about Chester, nothing. I put my dad aside. I said, I'm here for you in your trauma if you need it. She left me on red. People have let her know that I'm out here. She's refused to respond. I have tagged her myself. She has refused to respond. And I tagged her back when I was talking about it a couple of months ago now. And so I don't know what her problem is. Somebody said something to her in a comment. They sent it to me. They were like, hey, Linkin Park's out. Do you care about this? And she said, not at all. And I thought that was really interesting because she's had so much to say about Chester Bennington, but she ghosted me and now won't respond and doesn't seemingly care about the situation, which is really interesting. As a whole, I would say cat got her tongue. I would say industry cat got her tongue. And if that's not the case, then as a someone who stands to gain visibility of it through it. That's all she's gotten is visibility.
The audio keeps going in and out, unfortunately, but I can't. Yeah, it keeps going in and out. It's crazy.
Is it really bad?
It was for the last 20 seconds, pretty bad. But go ahead. Can you say something right now?
Yeah. Is it working?
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
All I was saying is that either she intends to be a part of the solution and can't, or she's actively leveraging the situation for visibility.
Got it.
And that's kind of just how I've seen it. It's been unfortunate, extremely unfortunate for me, because I was really excited to see what they had to say.
Christine Lindbergh Gillis says, as a Linkin Park fan with mental health issues who did go through SA as a child, it's very important for me that those in the band don't support stuff like Scientology.
I'm here for you. I'm trying to advocate on your behalf. I promise, Christine.
Destiny Salazar, the entitlement of fans is so disturbing to me. If strangers felt they could comment on my own family, I would be incensed. Yeah, it does seem to come a little bit with the territory, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, it's been almost 17, 18 years of this, and I know my father protected me for a reason. It's just he's not here to do that, and I got to protect him now. So,
yeah, incensing.
But when you got your mind screwed on and your head on your shoulders, that's all that matters. It's just staying in that energy.
All right, last two. Destiny Salazar says the industry is well aware of Scientology. They just don't care. It's true. It does seem to be that way. And Ada says, maybe this is Chester yelling about Scientology.
Yeah, I keep saying that I am my father. I think people take that a little weird. I am literally his legacy. I am his flesh and blood. I am here reincarnate in my own body to act as a voice for both of us. My life is a manifestation of all that has come before me. And so, I think when people get into their feelings about, no, there's only one Chester and there's only one you, it's like, yeah, but like by blood, we are the same. And I think that the industry absolutely knows about everything. They do traffic children, they do traffic adults, they do kill people and cover it up. I mean, you could say what you want about Kendrick Lamar. You can say what you want about people like Kendrick Lamar, like me, who are out here saying things and standing out there in the open, talking to the predators themselves and taking actions. Do you know anything about that? You look a little.
I mean, I know I don't know the allegations.
The allegations are that Drake has acted as a colonizer and that he goes where it's convenient and uses artists to puff himself up, and that he's actually been stealing lines and music from people for years, that he's actually involved in some form of human trafficking, and that he has been the detriment of a lot of people. Now, that may or may not be true. I'm sure every side has its story, but Kendrick kind of whooped his ass a couple of times in public because of stuff that he apparently is saying behind the scenes, kind of the way that Mike Shinoda has been doing. I have a lot of Drake to my Kendrick, if the lore is accurate. And I just think that there are people out there who are advocating for the truth, who are being polarized by the nature of the discussion. And I think that that's something that's also happening to me. I'm not saying that, Kendrick and I are one, but I've been advocating for this position. Kendrick has been literally in lockstep this entire time. And with that being said, that he is someone in the industry who is claiming that the industry is far more devious, conniving, and diabolical than anybody would give it credit for, and that the people who benefit from this are people who truly benefit from this. They result in victimization, or their allegiance results in victimization, that there are children involved. That's why when I came out last year, I was like, hey, Kendrick, all those executives, you said you saved the children and you're not going to justify it. I'm one of the children. I'm surrounded by the execs. Here we are. Here's Linkin Park. Executive decisions are being made. Executive functions are being made, perceivable, but only from a certain angle. And so with all that being said, I'm here as a victim's advocate. I'm here as an advocate for myself. I'm here as an advocate for people like Christine. It is the reason that I have spoken out so actively about Linkin Park, that I am standing, like, I'm standing for you. Like, that is why we're here. The only reason I said anything about Linkin Park is because they have continued to brutalize and victimize everybody. And there are, again, people whose lives have been saved. There are people who would not be here today if they did not have this coping mechanism, this thing to fall back on, this tool for their own healing and self-discovery. And they are making a mockery of it. It's, in my opinion, disgraceful. And I think they have massive responsibilities as people in a predatory industry to bring attention to it, given the fact that that's what their lead singer was doing their entire career, and actually dedicated his artistic efforts to, when he could have been doing his solo project, working with old bands, doing more stuff with people like Mark Morton, Frank Zumo. I'm just saying, like, he literally put all of his eggs in your basket, Mike, Brad, Dave, Joe. And I trusted all of you to be mindful of the fact that you are gods in this situation. You will be worshipped by your cult. The fanaticism is. And there's a difference between that fanatical worship and act you are on in your fan base, that you understand, that you mean, and you do the right thing. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with me this evening. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And if you ever want to do it again, let me know. Happy to do so. Okay.
I think we're going to have some things to talk about, because someone's going to have to say something at some point. And this was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you leading me through this. It was nice to talk to the pinned comments and to hear some clarifications about terminology and very real, I guess, circumstance of certain positions in Scientology and how it's applicable to our situation. This has been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And I appreciate you so much, Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you for hanging out with us, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you
Bye.
want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.